So if you'd seen the previous video, I had just bought my blue Mach 1 and I was keeping it up at the hangar where my parents worked. They had two hangars. This was kind of a smaller one they had, and then they had a larger one that you'll see in the other pictures. But I loved keeping it up here away from everything. And then just going around and looking at the car brand new. This was so fun to see the car and to be able to check out everything about it. I'm so happy that it came on the original wheels. I'm glad that the front bumper didn't have any holes drilled in it for a license plate or anything like that. There's just a lot of fun little details that I would look over the car and enjoy. These pictures are fun to look at too because this hangar doesn't exist anymore, and this whole airport had been torn down and moved, and all of the buildings here have been moved, and the concrete was broken up, the asphalt for the tarmac and the runway and the taxiway was all bulldozed and destroyed. And so looking back here is like looking back in history to a place that doesn't exist anymore. And as I look at this picture, I see those two red toolboxes, and those are important because those were my dad's, and he was AMP certified as an aviation mechanic. During the Vietnam War, he was in the U.S. Air Force and he was stationed in Taiwan. So he would work on the F-4 Phantom, he would work on the C-130s, the C-141s, some of the bigger military aircraft, and that's really cool to look back at his neat history with that and his skill, as well as private sector when he would have his own flight school and do his own maintenance. And he even did a lot of work for major airlines and the jets in Dubai. He ran his own flight school, he did his own maintenance with my mother, and so they were always working on the planes together, and those toolboxes were his. And when the airport moved and they got rid of everything, my twin brother and I each received one of those toolboxes, and so I have that toolbox in my garage. My brother has the other one in his garage, and so it's fun to look back at these pictures and see that. And so basically my dad had retired at that moment, and when the airport moved, and he did some work still in aviation, and he even went and flew across the world to go help with other projects and air ambulances that were jets and things like that. So that was pretty cool, but he always said that those toolboxes would go to his boys. So he did get to enjoy seeing those in our different houses that my brother and I had, and he'd come over and they would be there, and then later he would pass away. So it was really cool to be up there at the airport. You can see the sunlight coming in the hangar door there. It was just a really nice, quiet place to work on the cars. I was just taking pictures of all the really cool things about the Mustang Mach 1, and looking at the badges and the running pony on the front, and just all the really cool things about this car, and having time to be with it. You can see the creeper there to crawl underneath it, and what I would really like and end up doing is cleaning and detailing this Mach 1 a lot and keeping my red V6 Mustang as my daily driver. So these are just some of the early pictures I have of it. And being up there at the airport with all of our siblings, we would get bored, so my little brother and my little sister asked what they could do to help, so I had them help pull out the spare tire, pull everything out, get underneath it, clean it. So they're under there with rags and they're cleaning the underside of the side skirts, and I started to pull out the headlights and clean behind the headlights because I just wanted that to all be nice and clean. And looking at the back of the car, something that stood out to me that you'll notice on a lot of New Edge Mustangs is the third brake light is usually white from being out in the sun and oxidized, and the corners are peeling up and kind of warped up from the heat. And so this third brake light looked perfect, and so that kind of proves that this was a super nice car that was always garaged and it didn't see a lot of time out in the sun. But the two top priorities for me for this car were to remove the shift light and the Sirius satellite radio bracket. And what I like about that setup was the Sirius satellite radio bracket used the two bolts on the HVAC controls. So you take out the radio bezel, and there's four bolts that hold, the defrost, the, air conditioning knobs, all that little section there. And that bracket was really slim, and you just took out two of those bolts and put them into the bracket, and then the bracket would squeeze between the bezel and the dashboard and come out at you, and then it did a 90-degree, and it was like a flat plate there. So it's like driving and being able to have it right there to play with the little unit there, the control panel of the Sirius satellite radio. And so I was able to take that out easily. I like that it wasn't drilled into the dash and there weren't holes in the dashboard for that. It came out real easy, and as a matter of fact, I kept it all these years, and when I did my 97 Mustang GT project, I had to use that bracket. I put it in where it is on the HVAC system in the bezel and had it poked out so it could hold my cellular phone, because I was using an app on my cell phone for the 97 GT car as my speedometer with the speedometer app, because the transmission on that car was built for our 70W and it was for a 99 plus, and if you know, the 99 plus uses the electronic speedometer and the older one is gear driven, so the speedometer did not work on the 97 GT. So I did use that bracket later, and I had kept it all those years. And so I had to take out the radio bezel. I had to find where all the wiring was going and just remove those. The radio came out relatively easy, and I was happy about that. The shift light, I had to disassemble the lower panel here where your knees would be, and then there's the metal one there. I wanted to get all that wiring and just relocate it because it was tapped into the harness of the car, so I just decided to relocate it, and I kept it down by my feet. So I thought that was kind of cool. But it does still have the drill hole marks on top of the steering column there, but you never see them. They're really difficult to see, and they blend in because it's all black there. But just ran the wires. This was kind of one of the bigger projects I'd ever done on a Mustang before at the time. And you can see my brother's Mach 1 is there. We were changing the transmission because his synchros were gone. That's how he bought the car. But one of my favorite things was going up there to do homework like I had talked about. In that previous video about when I bought the car, I mentioned how I found the car because I was up there at the airport using my parents' internet, and I was able to get online and find the Mach 1 listing. And I would go up here, and now instead of being in the office where the desk and everything was in there, and even the heat and the air conditioning, I would come out here to the hangar where I could just sit at a desk and look at my Mach 1. So this is me doing homework and having the Mach 1 there to look at while I did it, and it was a lot of fun. Back then I didn't have any kids. My wife and I were just starting out, so she would go to work or go to dance practice or do things in the evening while I had my college classes, and then instead of just going home to the apartment, I would come up to the airport, also because I needed to for the internet connection like I had mentioned, and I would just sit at this desk and look at the beautiful Mach 1 as I did my homework. So I really, really like this picture. I'm glad I took this picture because this is something that happened, over 10 years ago, and I wasn't taking pictures and videos for Instagram or anything, or YouTube or anything back then. So this picture is really important to me that it even exists. So I thought that's pretty cool. The likelihood of having the camera around was slim to none, and back then I had a flip phone that didn't even take really good video or anything like that. So I had mentioned how this Mach 1 was important to me to help get me through college, so I didn't feel like all my life was consumed by college and nothing else, and I had this reward for my hard work. And I really did work hard for this car, and I'll talk about that in a second here. But I would do this, and then I would stop and take a break, and I would get the floor jack and the creeper and the jack stands, and I would roll it over to the car, and I would lift up the side or the front or the back, and I would just start detailing underneath the car, because to me I just loved the ability of cleaning this car and keeping it clean, since I still had my 97 Mustang as my daily driver and my wife had the Lexus as her daily driver. So this Mach 1 was available to sit here in the hangar, and I could get underneath it and clean it and detail it because I'd never be driving it in the rain. And so to me, this was so exciting to have a collectible car, a real Mach 1, an azure blue, rare Mustang. It reminded me of watching Barrett Jackson, and you would see these cool historic cars roll through and how they were taken care of. And I'd watch the Dream Car Garage Show where they would restore. It was actually a Grabber Blue Boss 302 and a 65 Shelby GT350, and when they had the car all disassembled, you could see factory markings and things. And so to me, I loved seeing this factory blue underneath the dash here. No rust, clean hardware. It's part of the unibody where the dash bolts in. And you can see how there's blue, and that proves that this is a blue car, that it hasn't just been painted blue and then if you get underneath it find out that the car used to be black or something. This is an actual azure blue car. I cleaned up the diff cover and made it look nice and shiny, and then I tried to preserve the paper tags that were left on the car, like this one on the axle, and looked at the Flowmaster exhaust system, which I would later change, and we'll get to that, but it was all in really good shape. And in the engine bay it was all very stock, except it did have this, I believe it's a Steeda strut tower brace. But under the car, it was nice and clean with no rust. Beautiful desert car, which I would grow to appreciate so much better, because I see so many of them now that are completely rusted out in the strut towers and there's holes all underneath everything. And this car, being in Nevada its whole life, was awesome for the car, so I can just clean it up. It's a little dirty from splashing in puddles or whatever, but that's just normal use for 75,000 miles. I just love these pictures of me there working on the car, just taking a break from my schoolwork and doing something I loved and enjoyed, listening to the radio, enjoying some music. Like I said, no kids. I have 3 little boys right now, so life's always hectic. And back then I was just doing whatever I wanted besides school and work. But I mean, school and work took up everything. And like I had said, I wanted something to reward myself because I was working so hard, and school and full-time work. And when I got the car, I was so excited. I remember at the time I was working in the warehouse in the aerosol room. It's a really big part of the building that's about the size of a Walmart, maybe half as big as a Walmart, and it's all of the aerosol cans and paints and the big boxes with 4 gallons of paint in them and the 5-gallon buckets of paint. And I would have to go through and do order filling. Basically, it's like going through the store, going through like what a Costco or a Sam's Club would be, and going as fast as you can with a tug, pulling trailers and stopping at every location and grabbing boxes and boxes and pails of paint and boxes of the heavy boxes of paint. And all this was on a super, super limited time restraint and on a quality restraint. So you could mispick one item for every 600 things you picked, or you would get written up. And this was in 2010, so it was right after the big financial crisis, and there were a lot of people looking for jobs. There were thousands of people who were putting in applications to work at this place, and they told us, if you're not fast enough, we'll get somebody else. And so I worked so hard and quick and accurate, because I said to myself, I want this Mach 1, I want to pay off this Mach 1, I want it to be mine. And so that was a goal, and I did accomplish that. It was nice to have this outlet to do this kind of stuff and enjoy and have fun and just enjoy some of the quiet alone time, because my whole life growing up I had a twin brother, and then on my mission I was with a companion the whole time, and then being married as well when I got back from my mission. So basically I hadn't really been alone very much, and this was a really quiet alone time for me. And it was really fun and interesting, but I'm the type of person that likes to enjoy these things with people and friends, and so I'd rather enjoy inviting friends or my brother to come up and work on the car with me too, but he was busy and he wasn't around, so I was doing this alone a lot. So started cleaning things up. You can see the control arms here. I would degrease them and scrub them down and then wash them off, and slowly just start cleaning up the undercarriage of the car, and it started looking pretty good. Up underneath the front bumper here, you can see it's kind of splashed and dirty, and then I would clean that up the best I could. And the electric fan was kind of gross looking, and I'd spray that and clean it, and each one of those little spokes it's kind of hard to clean. I did notice that the high flow cats had damage on both of them, but one of them, the shielding was kind of peeled back, so I just cut the excess off, and it's never been a problem. It didn't damage the catalytic converter. But it was always fun to have the Mach 1 up there at the hangar. I'd come up with my V6 and I'd pull out the Mach 1 and work on it and clean it and everything. It just was a lot of fun. But you can spend a lot of time detailing underneath a car, and I didn't know what a lot of these components were back then. I was so new to the Mustangs. I never really had to do anything on the V6. And so there's my Flowmaster exhaust system, a nice picture of the exhaust tip. And the paint on this car was fantastic. It still is beautiful, but it cleaned up so nicely. I was so happy to wax it and see how beautiful this azure blue comes out, and it looked so nice. So very rewarding to have a car that was so nice and beautiful and new to me at the time. So going up to the hangar was always fun, and seeing the car there and working on it a little bit. I got a battery tender for it so the battery wouldn't die. I had that plugged in all the time. I still have these battery tenders, and so there's just kind of installing it for the first time. I'd never had anything like that before, so that was pretty cool. And so like I said, I'd come up in my V6 and I would drive the Mach 1 around at the airport. It wasn't registered quite yet, so I'd come up and visit the car, have some fun. And my brother had his Mach 1 up there too, and we get him out together. So this was really fun to get the two of our cars together. This is the first real photo shoot we have of both of our Mach 1s together, and this is the hangar that my parents had built. It was really big, and they had a lot of airplanes in there for the flight school, and they had paved all this area here, so it was kind of our own little space just to hang out and enjoy the cars and get them out. And it's always so quiet up there at the airport. A plane will take off and then it's quiet because there's just no roads. This was on top of a mesa, so there literally was just the sound of the wind in our ears. And so it was just fun to be up there as a family, because we would be kind of bored while our parents would work on the airplanes and fly and do instructing and things, and the kids were all up there riding our bikes or doing whatever, rolling tires off the cliff. Old airplane tires. Like 100 years ago, that used to be the landfill. They would just dump stuff off the side of the cliff there. But anyway, there's my brother's Mach 1 there too. But these are the first pictures that I really have of the car, where I had it cleaned up and I could take it out. I don't know why some of the pictures were ruined like that, but anyway, this is another row of hangars where my grandpa kept his World War II airplane. It was a BT-13, if anybody knows what that is. Similar to a T-6 Texan. But anyway, drove it down there, and it was just a nice place to enjoy the car. You could get out, listen to it idle. There's no traffic driving by. There's no other noises. So you could really hear the car and experience it and hear what it's like driving it up and down the road. And I tried to get some pictures, but back then I just had an old Sony camera. So anyway, cool gauges. You can see there's a little scuff between the tack and the speedometer there. That's a little scratch on the plastic lens, and I did replace that later on. But nice pictures in the shade. These are some of my favorite pictures of how it looked when it was stock, of course, so still stock ride height and no AFS rear wheels. We'll get to that later, but this is the hangar and the airport. This is where our family spent a lot of our lives, and so it was fun to now have a toy to bring up here and play with. Well, we were still up here at the airport all the time, and as I got older and I go to college, I was up there more just to use the internet or whatever, but it was a nice time to see my parents around, because now that I was married and on my own, I would now have the chance to go up and see the car, and my parents would be there sometimes, and so it was good to see them up there. But here's the interior, totally stock, non-interior upgrade package car. And so if you watch my videos all the time, I talk a lot about the interior upgrade package, and I think the reason it means so much to me is because my car did not come with it, and I really wanted it for the car. I didn't like those shorter, dinky headrests. I wanted the bigger ones that the Cobras and the Mach 1s and the Bullet came with, and I wanted the car to look like a Mach 1 was in my mind. So the radio, shifter bezel, all that area on an interior upgrade package car is silver, and so here it's just black on this car, and I thought that the previous owner had swapped it all out before he sold me the car or something, but that just wasn't the case. And you can see the pedals down below, they're actually bare because the guy was in the process of converting those to OEM Ford, really nice Bullet pedals, Mach 1 pedals, they're all the same. And he got the gas pedal on there, but the clutch and the brake pedal were not done yet. They were in the center console when I bought the car, and so to get those on, it's easiest to boil water and put them in hot water so they get soft, and then you can wrap them around, because you do have a hard time wrapping them around as they fit on those metal pedals. But anyway, you can see in these pictures that that's how I bought the car. It didn't have the pedals yet, it didn't have the interior upgrade package yet, and those are all things that I added to the car. And you might say, well, the car is more rare without those things. And I say, it might be, but those are things that I think the car should have had, and I don't like the way it looks without them, so I will definitely add those to the car. And if you want to go back, it's always easy to just put stock pedals back on it, and I have the original bezels, I kept those. And so something cool that I had was the Oasis report to the car, and that's something on the forums. There were people who could get these, and I think it's similar to the Marty report. They had access to database stuff in Ford, and if you gave them the VIN number, they would give you the breakdown of the car and any little notes about it as well. And so it shows the 355 gears, the azure blue, shows the build date of 14 of July 2003. I thought that's pretty cool. And that's really significant too, because the new model year came out the next month or half a month later in August, and this car had the DB cylinder heads, which came on the '04 Mach 1, so it does have the 9-thread heads from being such a late build. So pretty cool. Lots of cool stuff to look through here, as well as the 4.6 liter dual overhead cam and all that stuff. But halfway down here it says with front two-way headrest. So that would be the non-interior upgrade package headrest. And so this proves that the car was ordered the way it was, because I actually don't have the window sticker to this car. Something else that's cool, towards the top it says 17-inch diameter mini spare tire. That's kind of cool because the Mach 1's Bullets and Cobras that came with the bigger brake calipers actually had a different size spare tire than the other cars. I didn't know that until someone had told me recently. So it was cool to look through all this stuff and see what the car had. This is driving the little frontage road to the hangar. I just really like this little area. And I have some footage of my brother and me driving here with our Mach 1s. It's really terrible old footage, but I'll insert that footage here. The sound isn't good either, but it is cool to see this historic moment of my brother and me with our first Mach 1s. And like I had said before, it was always windy up there at the airport, so you'll hear the wind in the camera as well. Always breezy. Here's another shot of those nice Flowmaster tips. It was the full cab back. I took these pictures because I was listing it for sale. We'll get to that later, but one of the things my brother and I always talk about is we try to remember what people say about the cars. And I remember on the phone with the guy about the catback exhaust, this Flowmaster kit. He said the car is really loud, you'll hear it coming from a block away. And so I thought that was pretty cool. You know, the Flowmasters have kind of more of a drone, kind of a tin can sound, but they do have a good bass tone, so you do hear the car, even though it's not viciously loud like the SLPs and the Borlas and the Magna Packs that I have on my other Mustangs right now, and currently on this Mach 1 now. But the Flowmasters, they're just one step above stock as far as I look at it. They're louder, but they just don't really give the full potential that the 4.6 liter has to offer, the raw, loud grumble that this car can have. But it does have a nice little rumble to it. But anyway, I thought that was kind of funny that he had said that. Beautiful pictures up here at the airport. Like I said, they had moved the airport, so this hangar here was very important to us. This was my parents' hard work, and when they moved the airport, my parents just stopped doing all of the flight school and maintenance and everything, and these buildings still exist at the new airport across town. So anyway, it's just kind of cool to see all this and have such a cool place to showcase my first V8 Mustang, my first Mach 1. This was a dream come true. I love this beautiful car. I think this camera did take pretty good pictures that showed the color. The azure blue was well represented. Some of the newer cameras are just too realistic and they don't really show the color like this one right here. I love how the azure blue is represented. I remember looking and wondering if azure blue and another blue were offered on the Mach 1 because they looked so different in different pictures. But there I am with my V6 Mustang. I still loved it a lot. I was so happy and thrilled. I was just excited to have these two Mustangs. And you know, looking back at it, I had no idea when this picture was taken that I would end up having over 20 Mustangs as time would go on. And I did sell this red V6 to my little sister, you know, so it would stay in the family. I have a whole story about that car. And her husband ended up selling it anyway, so it's kind of lost. But the blue Mach 1 is the oldest Mustang of all my Mustangs that I have. So I have kept the blue Mach 1 even though I've been through quite a few of other Mustangs, and I still, at the time this movie is being made, I have 8 Mustangs of those 21, 22 Mustangs. But it's just important to know that this blue one was my first one, and it's one that I always wanted. And so, of course, I wanted a Terminator at the time. Everybody wants the Terminators, but they were so much more expensive. I was so happy to have the Mach 1, and I was really willing to buy one. In fact, I remember telling people that if the performance were the same on a Mach 1 and a Terminator, I would choose the Mach 1 because it just looks so much better. I love the shaker hood and all that cool stuff. But looking back, I remember trying to negotiate getting this car with my wife and telling her that this will last over 150,000 miles easy. It'll be such a dependable car. I was planning on daily driving it, but I was lucky that that ended up not having to be the case, and I could keep it in great shape and enjoy it. I mean, I have put about 15,000 miles on this car, and I've had so many other Mustangs too that I don't feel bad about keeping the mileage low. But it's not like I won't drive it, you know. You know that about me if you know anything about me. But anyway, I just remember that. And I also remember driving it around and just being worried that someone's going to rear end the car and crash into the back of it and, you know, ding it at the grocery store. And that's why it was nice to have the V6 Mustang and later my Bullet Mustang and the other Mustangs I've had. They helped fulfill the ability to drive this car and enjoy it, but then go put it away and then drive another Mustang and not worry as much, because I was very protective of this car. But it was just such a nice car, so well taken care of. The engine was perfect, the transmission's perfect, it shifts so smooth. It's probably the nicest one I've ever driven. I drove a 5,000 mile Bullet that had the same transmission and it shifted just like it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just as nice as a 5,000 mile car. It really drives just like it. So. And you know, with all my friends, we were starting to get a good group of muscle cars together, and we started a club here in town and everything. And it was just really fun to be part of that and have the Mach 1 as such a nice car in that group. From the left to right, you have my little sister's 98 V6 Mustang, my friend's C4 84 Corvette, my brother's red Mach 1, my blue Mach 1, friend's blue '06 Charger, a red LS1 GTO, a LT1 Camaro, and then a white Trans Am WS6 on the end there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this section. There's going to be more to come, the updates, but that'll do it for now. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more Mustang content.